Hey, did you ever wonder what your farm animals do when you're not around? You know, in the same realm of your toys, pets, household appliances when you're not around? No? Oh, well, you're not going to find this very interesting then. Barnyard! Yes, this movie. You know this movie. Almost everyone I know knows this movie. But not many people I know have actually seen the movie. They know about its existence, but they've never actually sat down and watched it. And to be honest, I can't really blame them for that. Watching the trailers alone, you can kind of get the general gist of what it's about. Animals do human things when the farmer's not around. And that's the joke, and that's the only joke in the whole film, really. And people, here's a general rule of writing. If your entire plot drives on one joke, it's going to fail. Now, I don't really hear people saying, "Oh, but Dale, Toy Story had the same thing as Barnyard. Why is that getting a free pass? You've talked about that before and you've always said it's been good." Well, I'll tell you why. In a bit. Anyway, let's get into the story. So, in this universe, as I've already mentioned, when the farmer's not around, the animals get up to their own hijinks, mainly human-based things. How is this possible? When did it happen? Are there more animals like this? Is it just on this farm? I don't know. The movie never told me. The leader of the farm, Ben, wants his son Otis to take over when he goes, but Otis doesn't want that responsibility and he just wants to goof off and hang with his pals. But then that changes when he suddenly is faced with the responsibility and he has to adjust quickly if he's going to defend the farm against the coyotes, which are hell-bent on harassing the animals. So that's essentially the plot, and there's not an awful lot to it. The whole party animal gimmick dies off very quickly, as truthfully, you could tell the story without the talking animal thing. It could be told with humans and it wouldn't be any different. And the story itself is, well, take the plot of The Lion King, apply it to barn animals, and take out any clever writing. I don't want to be mean to the plot, but it really is that thin. You know what's going to happen to the characters, who it's going to happen to, when it's going to happen, and what's the consequences of what happens. There's no real twists in this film, and the idea of animals acting like people does not add anything to the story other than a "oh haha, that's what the animals do when the farmer's not around, haha" kind of response. See, in Toy Story, the fact that the toys came to life came into play in very crucial moments of the plot, as it is the toys' ideology that they must stick with their kids and be with them through thick and thin, which is not only the driving force of this movie, but also the second and third one, and the fourth one whenever that's released. Seriously, Pixar, what the hell's going on there? It gives them motivation and reason. Here, like I said, you could take it out and the story would be just the same. Anytime it does come in, it's ultimately pointless. There's a scene when the farmer sees them acting like people and then they have to knock him out and make him think it's a dream. That ends, and it's never referenced again. There's a scene where Otis and some other bulls go and prank a kid who's been cow-tipping by boy-tipping him, and then they have to escape the cops. That ends, and it is never referenced again. There's this woman who's figured out what the animals are up to and tries to rat them out only to be called crazy. It ends, and is never referenced again. You see my problem here? The only moments in the movie that are remotely important is when it's just the animals. But with the amount of filler that's in the film, I'm sorry, but that's what it is. It means the main story isn't given time to breathe or develop, and therefore not interesting. The same also goes for the jokes. Now, here's the thing. Because of my Asperger's, a lot of the time, I find it really hard to pick up on jokes in media, unless it's made very clear to me that it's supposed to be a joke. Like, people can be laughing at something that I've not been able to pick up on, but then I always end up realizing a few seconds later, oh, that was meant to be a joke, and then I'll find it funny. But the interesting thing here is, I was actually able to pick up on the jokes from this, but I still ended up thinking, oh yeah, that was meant to be a joke. Because all the jokes in this are not funny, aside from, like, I don't know, two, which I kind of chuckled at. Yeah, alright, so how do I explain the jokes in this? Well, you know how in something like The Simpsons, jokes happen and they're over with in a few seconds? Well, that's not really how Barnyard works. It kind of goes on the Family Guy realm of jokes. I'm going to show you two separate jokes, one from The Simpsons and the other from Barnyard in Simpsons.
Oh! I sold it all for 25 bucks! Oh!
Come on, everybody, it makes you feel better.
Barnyard.
Your point? Hey, come on, I do that for fun. Not 'cause I have to, come on. big deal. I fetch balls. One little flaw. Huh? This doesn't mean anything.
Need I say more? Moving on to the animation, it isn't awful. I mean, the backgrounds are nice enough, if a bit generic, and the character animation is fluent enough. But the designs. Oy. Alright, I wish I didn't have to go biology on you guys, but it has to be said. Why? Why do the bulls have udders? Seriously. That's basically the animal equivalent of giving a guy breasts and taking away his wee man, which basically makes him a woman. Oh, that's actually quite a controversial statement I've just made there. Oh well, we'll see what happens. Anyway, it's just creepy. The cow thing, not the human analogy. I'm gonna piss someone off here. That's the only way I could describe the design of the cattle in this movie. Well, at least the bulls, I mean, the cows don't look that bad, and they actually look like cows. Honestly, look at the difference. The bulls just look off. Aside from the others, there's another thing that looks weird, and it's also on the horses too if you have a look at them. Cows and horses are prey animals, so in real life they have eyes on the side of their head, unlike predators that have eyes on the front of their head. So to have the eyes not only on the front of the animals' heads, but also extremely close together, it just looks off to me. Though, again, it's a bit more forgiving on the cows and other animals such as the pigs, chicken and sheep. And that's probably because they're better designed than the bulls and horses. Actually, why is there a problem with the bulls in the first place? They show another bull in the movie who actually looks like a bull and doesn't have udders, but the other bulls have udders. What the hell's going on with this bull? Aside from the character design, almost everything about the animals seems to lack texture. Hardly any of the animals seem to have fur except for the ferret and the coyotes, and only seem to have skin. Which I guess I could understand because maybe the movie just didn't have a budget for it. But Alpha and Omega had a much less of a budget than this, and they actually managed to get the textures right, at least on the fur of the wolves, so there's no real excuse here. Bottom line, the animation is just bad. And don't even get me started on the humans. I mean, really, look at them. Humans aren't in this movie very much, but they still look awful. I mean, I know the kid is ugly because he's the villain, but the rest? Why? Also, the kid blatantly rips off Nelson Muntz and I don't like it. Moving on to the characters themselves, there isn't a whole lot to say. Honestly, a lot of the time, none of them really have much of a purpose within this film. Pip, Peck, Freddy and Pig are all in the film just to show that they are Otis's pals, and they all have this one-dimensional personality which all contributes to be the comic relief. I would say except for Pip, but he's not much stronger in the story. All he does is really give a couple of pep talks. Same goes for Miles, who should have a stronger role because the movie seems to want him as to be this wise mentor that Otis can turn to, but he doesn't really do anything except for, like Pip, give him a pep talk. The only other thing they really do is show up at the end for the final showdown between the farm animals and the coyotes. Speaking of the coyotes, is it just me or does Dag look a bit like Foxy? No, just me? Okay, moving on. On the topic of Dag, he's a pretty poor villain. I mean, yeah, he fits in the predators or mean cliche well enough, but he doesn't pose as much of a threat as he should, because he only shows up in the first and third act. In the second act, he's hardly ever mentioned and he's not seen. I mean, sure, he does terrible things in the acts he's in, but the film doesn't give you much time to feel the effects. It just seems to move on too quick. Maybe they just wanted to show you more of those wacky animal hijinks. There's also Daisy and her friend Bessie, with Daisy acting like Otis's love interest. And, well, that's all she really is. The only slight difference here is that she's pregnant, but ultimately that doesn't really come to anything except for giving Otis more responsibility, I suppose. And Bessie, well, she's voiced by Wanda Sykes, so I guess they felt they had to have that sassy black woman in this movie somehow. All she really does is snark at Otis and be mean to him, even though he doesn't actually really do anything to deserve it, and, well, not much else. This also goes for Maddie, a little chick that sees Otis somewhat as a big brother. Now, don't get me wrong, every interaction between these two is adorable, and I love them, but she doesn't have much of a purpose, except for being the catalyst to the story later on. I'm sensing a pattern with the side characters. None of them seem to have much of a purpose except for Dag and the protagonists. I know Dag's involved in this because he's just the villain. None of them are very memorable. Well, maybe except for this guy.
She call me Mr. Bombastic, very fantastic, but
There, I acknowledge that the Biggie cheese meme exists. Satisfied? The only ones that really do matter in the story are Dag, Otis, and his dad Ben. Otis is pretty bland on his own, but he is somewhat likable in that, well, he does just want to go off and party. When he is suddenly faced with his new responsibilities, he does genuinely try to rise up to them. But that's all I can really say for him. His father, Ben, is pretty much the stern father, but the film does show he really does care about Otis, which is even sweeter when you learn that Otis is not really Ben's biological son, and it is Ben who provides the few good heartwarming moments in this film.
It's a beautiful night. I remember when I used to sit out here with your sister.
I don't have a sister.
Oh, yeah. That was you, wasn't it?
Oh, thank you. All right. So, are we okay?
We're okay.
Alright, so what's good in this movie? Well, like I said, I like some of the character designs, basically anything that isn't a human, bovine, or equine, and the backgrounds are nice, if a bit bland. But the one thing I really do like about this movie is the message it's trying to send. Even though it's one that's been done many times before, it's still well done here.
A strong man stands up for himself. A stronger man stands up for others.
One day we do have to grow up and accept our new responsibilities. It's possible to be a good leader or boss, but still maintain the fun in life. Just because you grow up doesn't mean the party's over, it just involves a lot more planning. And some lessons are harder to learn than others. And like I said, the relationship between Ben and Otis is, again, well generic, very nice. Especially when he does talk to Otis about his own worries.
I never thought I was going to amount to much. Now, I certainly didn't think I'd be in charge of anything. But that all changed one day. It was the day you showed up. I head out into the meadow. I see this little baby calf, all alone, stumbling around. You know, before you became a nightmare. Well, I took you home that night. And I know it doesn't sound possible, but I looked up into the sky, and I would have swore I saw the stars dance. At that moment, I knew my place was here, taking care of things.
Given that Ben was already the leader of the farm, it's implied he had to go through a lot to get there. It would have been interesting to see Ben's journey into becoming a leader. How finding Otis helped him to find a purpose, and eventually made him realise that he could be more than a good leader. Somehow I would have found that more interesting. Also, the battle between him and Dag is awesome, especially with Sam Elliott singing a rendition of I Won't Back Down by Johnny Cash. That scene is amazing. But then again, that's not really what the film wants to be. It doesn't want to be about a personal journey of someone going from a nobody to a leader. It just wants to show the hijinks of animals at the farm and what they do when the farmer's not there, and I guess I shouldn't wish too much more from them. But then again, I can't be too harsh on Nickelodeon because, well, 6 years after they made this, they helped produce Rango, which is actually one of my favourite movies of all time. So hey, at least I can see they're moving on from Barnyard and they've evolved since then. That's all I'm going to say about Rango for now, because if I don't, then this review is going to go on for much longer than it has to, because I really, really love that movie. I will talk about it in the future in more depth. So to sum it up, Barnyard is pretty bland and uninteresting as a movie. There's not a whole lot going for it to keep my interest, except for a few nice moments between Ben and Otis, the message, and that does contain some decent animation. But that's it really. I suppose some kids could get something out of this, but for anyone older, there's not much to look at. So the only real recommendation I can give is that if you have a young kid or cousin or anything who wants to watch this, it's harmless enough. It'll probably satisfy them enough, but in terms of anyone older than that, I can say you get bored with it very quickly. While these guys may have been the original party animals, for me, the party was over long before it started. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this video. Have a good day. Thanks guys. Cheers.